The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, anti-Tiger cannons, Triathlon, 7.7 Heavies, and Metal Beasts, the French missile demon. Swift-wheeled tanks capable of moving across the map in the nick of an eye are no surprise to anyone playing top-tier battles. ATGM carriers capable of ensuring hits at any distance are also another frequent sight. But could these two classes be combined in a single machine? Oh yes. One of the best examples of such a symbiosis is the new French tank destroyer, the Mephisto. This machine's main weapon is a two-axis stabilized missile launcher with elevation angles between -10 and +10 degrees. The ammunition is stored in the rear. The engine is in the center while the transmission is found in the bottom. The driver and the commander sit in the front, the gunner is in the center, and the loader is in the rear. The sights offer a thermal vision device. Defensive measures include smoke grenades. Let's start with the weaponry. It's the Hot 2 anti-tank guided missile with a penetration rate reaching 900 millimeters. It's more than enough for any enemy, so much so that even reactive armor may not save them. The launcher has 4 ready-to-go missiles, so there's little chance for your opponent to survive should they find their way into your sights. But once the first 4 missiles are gone, the Mephisto becomes helpless for 15 seconds. Its full ammo capacity is 12 ATGMs. We can't call that small, but longer battles may require you to go back to an allied point to restock. Still, it won't be too hard to reach one. The engine's power looks pretty moderate, but it's more than capable of moving such a small mass as the Mephisto's, resulting in an amazing mobility level. Of course, a wheeled vehicle has some limits. It can only achieve its top speed of 90 kilometers per hour on a good road, so keep that in mind when planning your route. Anyway, this French machine can leave many allies behind while driving cross-country. Its maneuverability is just as good thanks to 2 steering axles. Being able to turn in a tight spot compensates for a lacking reverse speed and helps you retreat in no time when needed. However, this level of mobility was achieved thanks to a small mass, and that comes with vulnerability. The Mephisto's armor cannot even sustain a volley from a large caliber machine gun. Its size is also a magnet for enemy air since it's a very easy target. Facing tanks is no cakewalk either. Of course, some shells may go through the hull with the fuse untriggered and thus no major damage, but a large caliber MG found on every other opponent's roof is sure to send it to the hangar. The recommended tactics for the Mephisto imply keeping maximum possible distance to the enemy and using cover. The thermal vision device helps to detect targets early, while the mobility and maneuverability help to change positions in time. Speaking of positions, the best ones are those on hill ridges, where you hide the hull and peek just the launchers out. The Second World War saw a rapid obsolescence of technology. The development was so fast that some prototype tanks became a thing of the past before leaving the blueprint stage. Many successful models that had proven their worth at the beginning of their careers left their pedestals just as quickly. The German Tiger is a fitting example of this. By 1944, the Allies learned how to deal with its armor, its 88mm cannon already had equal competitors, and the square shape started to look out of fashion. Of course, it was still a very powerful tank, but its enemies could match it. But if you remember, the Tiger's appearance had become a major shock only a couple years prior. The Soviet Army was the first to learn of the new vehicle, although its actual combat debut was pretty inauspicious back in late 1942. The Germans sent the Tigers to the south of Lake Ladoga, where they failed to achieve any success due to the area's boggy nature. The German battalion took a short break and saw its next mission in January 1943, but failed again. The Soviet army repelled the attack on the village and captured a Tiger with a broken engine in the process. The second Beast drove into the peat and got stuck. And that's how the USSR came into not just one but two of the newest German tanks, with one of them completely intact. Once studied, the trophies were tested for penetration. The results were pretty shocking. The T-70's 45mm gun could only damage it with a sub-caliber shell at a short distance. The 57mm gun could handle the sides, but the frontal armor would not bulge at any distance beyond 500 meters. The T-34's 76mm gun showed even worse performance. The AP rounds couldn't damage the Tiger from the front at 200 meters. Even the experimental sub-caliber rounds failed. It looked like no Soviet tank in service could damage the new German machine. Meanwhile, the Tiger itself could easily penetrate the KV-1 with an improved front. Still, the Soviets found a way. Their first success was with an 85mm anti-aircraft cannon. It managed to pen the front plate at 1 kilometer away while the sides could be hit from 1.5 kilometers. The 122mm cannon produced an even better result. Its second hit tore off the turret from its ring, taking a piece of armor with it. The Tiger had a major influence on Soviet tanks. While the Army was studying it, the KV-13 started its tests, also known as the IS-1, with a 76mm gun. And the newest Soviet tank had already become outdated. The T-34 and the KV-1 needed replacement cannons too. What could they do? The solution took little time to develop. The anti-aircraft gun was used as a base for the new 85mm tank guns. August 1943 saw the new Su-85 tank destroyers and KV-85 tanks, while the first T-34-85 saw service in early 1944. The IS-1 received a major revamp for a new turret, and later even received the 122mm gun. And that's how the Soviet tanks became competitive again in 1944. The Allies were less enthusiastic about the Tiger, though. Much like the Soviet Union, they first encountered the new German machine in late 1942, but neither the American nor the British troops could capture an intact tank. The Germans would blow up damaged Tigers or try to haul them back to a base, so the lack of credible data would sometimes lead to some truly wild speculations in the British media. One author went so far as to state that the Tiger was the new standard tank, and the Germans were making 800 of them a month. Still, the dust settled in 1943. As it turned out, the Sherman 75mm gun could handle the Tiger's sides, while the British 6-pounder could even penetrate the front. The 17-pounder worked well at longer distances, and the long-barreled Shermans were on their way to service. 1944 saw a new change in the situation, though. While the Soviet tankers felt little surprised to see the Panthers after the Tigers, the Allies were taken completely unawares. However, we've told you this story already. Following your requests from the comments, today we're going to have a competition among heavy tanks with a BR of 7.7. Please welcome the American M103, the Soviet IS-4, the British Conqueror, the French AMX-50 Surbes, and of course, the legendary German Maus, a rare machine owned by passionate collectors and old-timers in the game. As usual, we'll start with a race across various grounds. The participants line up at the start, and let's go. The Maus is instantly behind, which is unsurprising for this 188-ton monster. Others stay close at first. The few hundred meters are behind, and we can spot a leader. It's the French tank. Next, we see the British and the American teams, with the IS keeping up in 4th place. The M103 catches up with the Brit in the snow, but the desert suddenly pushes the Soviet crew to the front. And here's the finish line. Even helicopters came to support our racers. The first to finish is the permanent leader in this race, the French AMX. Next comes the IS-4, then almost at once, the British and the American tanks, while the Maus is barely visible on the horizon. Guess we'll have to wait. Now let's see what kind of firepower they've got. We'll be shooting at the Soviet T-54 tanks from 500 meters, one with its side and another with its front to us. Each gunner makes a successful first shot at the side target. The capped rounds of the IS and the Mouse leave no chance for the crew of the T-54, while others found a nice little area under the turret for maximum damage. The French tank reloads first and sends a solid shot through the front plate right away. Target destroyed. 9 seconds later, the American and British crews repeat the feat. Their rounds have no issue penning the T-54's front. Here's the Mouse shooting. The capped round hits the turret. The IS takes the longest to reload, and its HE shell breaks the target's roof with ease. And now it's time for the most important test for our heavies, their own armor. We'll be using the very same T-54s, shooting first capped rounds, then HE shells. The French tank exposes its armor first. The complex layout of the oscillating turret and the hull geometry can sometimes sustain a capped round hit, but there are too many vulnerabilities. The Heat FS shell can penetrate it wherever. Next, we've got the M103. Its frontal armor has no issue sustaining the APCR round. Only the small areas in the LFP and the turret ring are vulnerable. It can't do much against a Heat FS shell, though. This one can penetrate anything but the gun mantlet. The British tank shows similar performance. The capped round can only penetrate the LFP and the turret roof if the angle is good, while the Heat FS can pen anything but the turret cheeks, and even that only due to additional screens. Now it's the turn of the IS-4. Its crew put it at a slight angle to ensure safety against the capped round, and it worked! Now, the Heat FS doesn't even see the Soviet tank's armor as an obstacle. And finally, the Mouse. Its crew too angled its hull and turret. Capped rounds are completely useless here, and even the Heat FS ones take a lot of time to poke through the tough skin of this giant. Time to sum up. The bronze goes to the Mouse. Its armor is impressive, and if we had to choose the best protected tank, it would take the gold hands down. But mobility, aim speed, and reload times are in the way of climbing any higher here. The silver is shared by no less than 3 tanks today: the M103, the IS-4, and the Conqueror. Each of them needed just a little more to win. And the gold goes to the French AMX-50 Surbes. Yes, its army is lacking compared to competitors, but everywhere else, it's head and shoulders above them. Whew! Now it's time we answered some of the questions you asked us in the comments. The first question was sent by a player called American Hat. In Shooting Range 302, you said that the Keen Vision crew upgrade helped mark enemies on the map. Is that only in arcade? If so, why should I upgrade it if I primarily play RB? Hi again, Hat. In realistic mode, you might spot these tiny red arrows near the border of the screen that show the enemy your crew has spotted. The better your crew's Keen Vision is, the larger the distance at which it can spot a threat, and the faster you get a notification about it, in the form of little red arrows. So, it might make sense to boost this skill even if you only play RB. Squeezy Boy asks, can ATGMs on helis kill a plane? Hi there, Squeezy Boy. Yeah, sure, any ATGM can be guided towards a helicopter, while modern machines can even target air targets with their computers. There's even some ATGMs equipped with proximity fuses so that no direct hit is required. Another question comes from Anonymous Fish. What is booming and zooming exactly? I've heard of the strategy itself, but I just don't know what it is exactly. Hey, Fish. It's pretty simple. Booming and zooming is when a fighter dives at a target at high speed, opens fire, and then goes back up, independent of the result, without ever engaging in a dogfight. Rinse and repeat until your enemy is down. Falcon Hidalgo writes, why don't the F4EJ and F4EJ Kai in Japan have any GB like the American Phantom? Hi, Falcon. The Japanese Phantoms had no air-to-surface ordnance in their real-life arsenals, and we're trying to replicate real-life vehicles as best we can. And the last comment for today was written by 321 Battle. Nice video, but could you please tell the weight not only in pounds but also in kilograms? It helped very much. Hi there. The thing is, a bomb's mass isn't just a parameter, it's basically its second name. For instance, when we say the American 500-pound bomb, it can only mean the Mark 82. If we converted the mass of each ordnance from pounds to kilograms and vice versa, we'd spend more time on it and confuse those used to standard names in the process. If you need a quick way to compare bombs of various units, you can just divide pounds by 2 and get their approximate mass in kilograms. It's a rough estimate, but it's quick. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like, remember the quick conversion method, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.